we've got a couple of really big games to talk about in this week's Crosshairs. One is bioshock 2, which I think undoubtedly will be one of the big hits for 2009. And we're also going to talk Scribblenauts, which I think is going to be one of the big surprise hits of 2009. We're going to start with bioshock 2. This is going back to E3 because Laura actually got to play a little bit, look at a little bit.
No,
not play.
Not so much play.
Okay. But
you saw it.
Oh, I saw it.
You did see it, and you did get to chat to someone about Bioshock. So let's start with what you actually saw at E3 about Bioshock 2, mate.
Okay, well, they made a big deal of the multiplayer component, which they haven't revealed too much of in the past. So basically, they kind of went through what the multiplayer will be like, all the modes that you get to play. Basically, there are 3 modes: the free-for-all, team deathmatch, and another team-based mode that they haven't revealed yet. And there'll be 10 maps, and all the maps are going to be iconic locations from the first Bioshock game, which they've actually built from the ground up for multiplayer compatibility. And they've kind of redesigned them and made them look a little bit better.
Okay.
So.
Now they're not doing the multiplayer in-house, so this is a Digital Extremes, the guy who ported the team who ported the PS3 version of Bioshock. Have they said why they're doing that?
I think they said that they wanted to, the 2K Marin team and all the other 2K teams that worked in Bioshock 2 wanted to concentrate on the game itself, and they didn't want to kind of, I guess, worry about the multiplayer. So they wanted to be really solid multiplayer. So they said, okay, we'll give it to a team who we know does really kick-ass multiplayer.
Just really quickly, guys, your opinion, does a game like Bioshock need multiplayer, or does it feel a bit tacked on, do you think, because everyone else is doing multiplayer? Because the first one worked really well without it.
Well, I saw the multiplayer and it looked really fun. And it's got a different story to the single-player campaign in Bioshock 2. It's actually set a year before the events of the first Bioshock game, and there's a whole different story and stuff. So it looks, I thought it looked really good.
It's when all the splicers are going crazy, is that right?
Yeah.
Does that actually work? I mean, given that this is a sequel in single player and a prequel in multiplayer, is that a bit of a...
It's confusing, but the events, like the 2 stories, aren't tied together at all, so I think it works.
Okay. Laura, who did you actually get to speak to at E3 about this?
I spoke to Melissa Miller from 2K Marin about Bioshock 2.
Hi, I'm Melissa Miller. I'm a senior producer at 2K Marin, and I'm here at E3 talking about Bioshock 2. When Bioshock 2 was announced, there was all this debate on the interwebs of whether it was going to be a sequel or a prequel, and it's actually both. The single-player portion is a sequel and takes place 10 years after the events of the first game, while the multiplayer component is actually set in the Civil War, so it's in the year before the events of the first game. Big Daddies are really, really popular characters. I mean, they're so iconic, you can't imagine Rapture without them. And one of the things that we wanted to do with Bioshock 2 was to give you a change in perspective. In Bioshock 1, you actually saw Rapture as an outsider, essentially. And we thought it would be really interesting and a really exciting gameplay experience to give you, to allow you to play someone who was a key part of Rapture's history and to get that perspective. So you play as the very first Big Daddy throughout single player, and you're trying to, one of the things that, one of the big mysteries is, how did you become the Big Daddy? What were the circumstances that led to that? And then, of course, with the multiplayer component, we're actually giving you also an insider perspective of Rapture, but it's from the perspective of just a normal citizen. You know, somebody who's living in Rapture and has gotten caught up in the Civil War and they're just trying to survive, and showing how that type of person could end up becoming addicted to Adam, as we saw in the Splicers in Bioshock 1. We're really excited with our multiplayer component. We offer 3 modes. We have a free-for-all called Survival of the Fittest, a team deathmatch called Civil War, and a third mode that is also team-based, but we're not actually revealing today. Each mode supports 10 players. We have 10 different maps, all featuring iconic locations that people fell in love with in Rapture. So that's something cool too, because the single player allows us to explore brand new locations in Rapture, while the multiplayer offers you the chance to revisit those familiar, iconic locations. But the thing that I want to note is, with the multiplayer maps, even though they look familiar, every single one of them has been built from scratch specifically for multiplayer gameplay. In some cases, they are really different from the place that you saw in Bioshock 1. But also, it's in the timeline, it's before Rapture became so destroyed. So you can go to places like Mercury Suites, where people live, where all the really important people lived. and it's beautiful. There's gardens, there's ivy up the wall and everything. It's before it was really destroyed. Playing as the Big Daddy means you get all his toys. I know a lot of people loved the drill, and that's one of the best new things about playing the first Big Daddy. So you can pull your drill out, drill splicers in the head. There's also a rivet gun, which people were always thinking like, God, I want to pick that up from the first game, and now you can. And there are other Big Daddy outfits as well. The Big Sister is a new threat in Rapture. For reasons unknown, she is just hell-bent on trying to recreate Rapture. And it's a Rapture that she remembers because she was a little sister. And so she has now started to kidnap little girls from the Atlantic coast and make them into new little sisters. She's bringing them back to Rapture, pairing them with Big Daddies, and sending them out into the world. And why she's doing this is one of the big mysteries.
What about the environment of Rapture? So you've chosen to kind of go outside Rapture and have players move through the ocean floor. What were you kind of trying to do with that setting?
Well, as our creative director says, ironically, it's the place where you breathe. One of the things that we noticed in terms of feedback from fans after the first game was released was that they felt like the game was just this really frenetic pace, and they didn't have a chance to slow down and really take things in. And so the underwater sections, that's something that we can use to kind of even out that pacing and allow them time to take in bits of the story or to explore and just get a break from all the crazy splicer stuff happening. Bioshock 2 is coming out this November 3rd for Xbox 360, PS3, and PC.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.